Hello, everybody. I'm here to introduce the panel that we're going to have soon. And I'd like to introduce Yousr Dhaouadi. She's a fourth-year PhD student in the Chemical Engineering program in the College of Engineering and Computer Science. She's been conducting research in persister cells, which are found in biofilms, and that those really cause the resistance in treating chronic bacterial infections. She was recently awarded the first place in 2022 ECS Research Day Prize for presentation in the Health and Wellbeing category. Dhaouadi is a former associate of the WISE Future Professionals program. She has served in many leadership positions in the graduate student organization and is currently serving as the president. She's also the graduate student representative in the Board of Trustees. She transferred from the American University of Sharjah in United Arab Emirates to Syracuse University for her bachelor's degree in chemical engineering. She's an international student from Tunisia. Yousr?
Hello. So should I stand here, or should we have the panelists come up for? Yeah. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Truly a pleasure to moderate the undergraduate panel. I really think of myself as a graduate student and forget that I actually am technically an alumni of the engineering department here at SU. So my name is Yousr, and thank you very much, Dr. Nanjia, for the introduction. I am a 2017 undergraduate alumnus, and so I hope that can provide some perspective in moderating today. Very impressive undergraduate alumni and current undergraduates here on the panel. So with me today are three panelists. Their comprehensive bios are in your program brochure, but I did want to take a moment to introduce them to you. And they will elaborate on this too as well. So we have Treasurer Bellamy, Catherine Campbell, and Julia Riley. Treasurer graduated from SU in 2017 with a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering and a minor in African American Studies. During her time at SU, she held various leadership positions, amongst them serving as a program assistant for the WISE Women of Color in STEM program. She currently works as a scientist at L'Oreal in New Jersey. And so we welcome her back to SU and really thank her for spending time with us today. Next we have Catherine, who's a senior pursuing her undergraduate degree, all the way to the end. A senior pursuing her undergraduate degree right now here at SU and is going to be graduating soon this summer. She's in the Renee Crown Honors Program, majoring in medicinal chemistry and physics on the pre-medical track. Truly impressive. So she's had an impressive leadership profile as well here while studying and has been involved in the WISE Women of Color in STEM program, including the nomination-based new program modeled after FPP called CPP, which is Career Preparation Program, and she was a participant in the WISE Summer Research Program for 2 summers. So we truly look forward to her perspective from the undergraduate lens. And our third panelist in the middle today is Julia. She's a 2020 alumnus of Syracuse University. She's currently a second-year neuroscience PhD student and National Science Foundation Fellow at the University of Pennsylvania. At Syracuse, she majored in biochemistry and neuroscience. Yes. And during her time at SU, she participated in the WISE Summer Research Program and was the 2020 recipient of WISE's Norma Slepkeep Undergraduate Research Prize. So we truly welcome her back to campus, and we look forward to her perspective as well. So like I said, I'm very honored and very excited to be moderating the panel today, and we're going to be focusing a little bit on how undergraduates can balance the workload of being an undergraduate and then the fact that you're coming into college with this whole new list of responsibilities. And how do you put yourself out there and engage in programs that end up pushing you to go on to the next step in your life? And so without further ado, I would like to first give the floor to each panelist to introduce themselves and then briefly tell us on what motivated them to join WISE or seek out WISE and how they got involved to begin with. So if you want to start with Treasure first.
Yes. So hi, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Treasure Bellamy. I first just want to say it is an immense honor to be able to come back here as a panelist. As Yousr touched on, I was a program assistant for the WISE Women of Color in STEM program. It was a very fulfilling and exhilarating experience. And so being back here now really feels like a full circle moment. I would say what really got me into WISE when I was in undergrad was actually the Women of Color in STEM program. Jasmine Johnson, she was the undergrad student who really put in a lot of work into getting the program established. And her and I, we actually were pretty good friends. I think we took like a class or two together. So I learned about the program through her. And she ended up graduating a year before me, but I was, I believe, a part of the inaugural class of students who really went to the early programming when it was first established. And so the following year, I ended up applying to be a program assistant because I was really tied to the mission of the program. I really saw the value of it. And so I really wanted to be close to the program and more involved in it. And being, again, a program assistant, it really gave me the opportunity to connect with students from different majors, from the different colleges, and it really allowed me to see the value of the program, not only from a student's perspective, but also from a coordinator's perspective, because I got to look at the attendance rules, I got to talk with the people in the department about the type of programming they wanted to do and the importance behind why we were trying to create the things that we were creating. And so that's how I ended up getting involved in WISE, and that's how I ended up still, the mission of WISE, it carried on with me even after college, where I sought out communities of people, especially women of color in STEM, to really connect to in my career, some outside of my career, to help me get support and see the perspectives of how to handle different challenges as a woman of color, not only in corporate, but also in the STEM field as well.
Yeah, thank you. And that's a very good point with regards to building that connection with someone outside of your field. WISE really does that because you sit right next to someone from a totally different school and department, and you wouldn't encounter them in any other way. So I echo that for sure. So Julia, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Julia Riley. I graduated in 2020. As was said, I'm currently a PhD student at UPenn working on neuroscience and like Parkinson's-related research. So I originally got involved in different WISE events through hearing about it from my PI, Dr. Carlos Castaneda from undergrad, and our two lovely collaborators, Dr. Heidi Henley and Dr. Sandra Hewitt. They really made me aware of like the different funding opportunities for like research that WISE offered, and also the different opportunities for like meeting invited speakers and applying for the Slepecki Prize. And of course, being a PhD student, research in undergrad was this huge formative part of my undergraduate career and gave me this like sense of community, and especially having these two lovely, like strong female PIs that we got to collaborate with, I think really gave me a sense of my ability to succeed in this field and like have a place in this field. And then other than that, like even just like meeting with invited speakers, like hearing from your PIs that you think you're going to be, or they think you're going to be successful is like amazing and great, but like being able to talk to invited speakers and have them like instill confidence in you and tell you about their story, like you realize that they're just people too, and like you could still have a life and be like a normal individual, even if you go on in academia. And then the application for the Slepecki Prize was really formative and as well, in that I got to like really work on my paper, which ended up getting submitted for publication, and like get kind of a lot of different feedback on that and have a reason to ask people for feedback for that, which I think that we often feel like we need a reason to like ask people for feedback on our work and our writing, and you really don't. And just like having something to kind of push you beyond that barrier of like getting comfortable with asking people for feedback on things like that was really important as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. Catherine, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so hi everyone, thank you. My name is Catherine. I'm currently a senior at SU. Throughout my time here, I've spent 3 years doing research. I began working at Upstate Medical University the second semester of my freshman year. And taking part in research as an undergrad, there are so many great opportunities to meet new people and to really network around Syracuse and kind of see where you fit into the whole research scheme and where you want to go in your career. And I don't remember the first time I was introduced to WISE, but I know that it was related to doing research with others and connecting and finding out that there's this great community on campus where I can meet people who look like me and who have the same experiences as me, and to gain a lot of valuable skills that I can use in my career. So I was grateful enough to be a part of the career preparation program where I was able to hone a lot of those professional development skills and really network and make a lot of friends that I'm grateful to see here today. And be a part of a really rich history of WISE women that I was also able to learn a lot about today in this great program. So thank you for having me here.
Okay, so I thought the first question we would kind of pose to our panelists and talk about is, how did you balance your time well enough during undergrad that you were able to fulfill the duties of WISE, but also how do you look back at that and how did that make you who you are today? No, that's a little bit of a deep question, but I think the experiences you have in undergrad definitely hit back, and you reflect on those, and you realize that you are who you are today because of a lot of what you've been through as an undergraduate. And so I'm just curious to tap in and see how you resonate with that.
Oh, so I can start with that. So I, as you started touching on, was very involved on campus. And so it was very challenging at times for me to balance my responsibilities as a student, as well as the things that I chose to do outside of my academics, like work or just being involved in extracurricular activities. I would say for me, it really taught me how to make time for myself, to give myself a break, as well as to make time to check in with myself and to give myself structure. And and that still carries on with me today, because in undergrad, there were times where I ended up having burnout. And so even when I wanted to push myself to do work, my brain, it wouldn't allow me to. And so I actually had this conversation with my mother the other day, because she knows I was telling her about me doing the panel and everything, and she reminded me, you have to make time to give yourself a break, because if you don't make time yourself, your body will make time for you. And so that really reminded me too, with undergrad. Ended up having struggles with my mental health. I had problems with dealing with anxiety as well as depression. And again, my mantra at first was to just push through and to keep working through everything, and I can maybe make time for this later. But I got to the point where my body wouldn't allow that to happen. So I ended up, again, really I ended up having to reach a breaking point that made me really pay attention to what's actually going on outside of all the work I'm doing, what's actually going on with me, so that I can be my best self, and being my best self will allow me to do my best work. And I definitely have to thank Dr. Cadwell. She was an immense help in helping me with really getting organized and staying on track, creating schedules for myself outside of my work schedule, outside of school, schedules for studying, schedules for time for myself, and really keeping the perspective in my mind that you have to make sure you on your own are good first, and that will allow you to be the best in whatever else you choose to do. And so that's definitely a principle I still carry with me today.
That's very beautifully said. I feel like I echo that 100%. So, Julia, do you want to tell us a bit? I mean, you're in the graduate program now, so you definitely know how to balance responsibilities a lot of times.
I'm definitely still learning a little bit, but So for this, I think I would like to focus mostly on my involvement in research and with faculty members that are a part of WISE, and so having a really, I guess, being deeply involved in research as an undergrad, which is a really incredible opportunity that's presented to undergrads at Syracuse, just because, since it's a little bit of a university that, tends to have labs that can be, on the smaller side, I think that you have more of an opportunity as an undergraduate to be directly involved and, drive a project and, be independent. But that's also a lot of pressure, right? Because you're still learning how to do research, you're still learning how to manage, professional relationships, collaborations, and so on and so forth. and just like learning to navigate that space can take up a lot of time. And so I think that having relationships with the professors that I did talk to all the time about this and just having their guidance like played a big role in that. And yeah, so.
No, it's good enough answer, no? You're doing a pretty good job. Yeah, Catherine, go ahead.
Yeah, I completely echo what was said before, and I think another element that's really important to WISE that I really benefited from is the forward thinking and being part of that career preparation program where you're learning how to write a personal statement, practicing that skill. You're learning how to describe your research program and write that down. I know, planning for my future and graduation, starting that early and thinking about those things early on eventually helped me a lot in the future. Later on, when I have to, start writing my personal statement, I've already practiced those skills or learned a lot about those skills. So part of, I think, self-care is doing things that maybe in the moment doesn't seem super fun to like plan ahead or, spend some time thinking about hard things. But I know that when it came down to it and I was applying for graduate programs and things like that, it's something I really benefited from and saved me a lot of, I think, potential heartache or pain or stress that came with, moving on to future steps. So.
All right, so the next question I wanted to tap on, and thank you all for your answers so far, and we saw from the questions we got from a lot of the registrants, and is asking the panelists, how do you advocate for yourself as a woman in the STEM field or a woman of color in the STEM field? How did you feel the disparities or the discrepancies, I guess, in that field starting off, and how do you advocate for yourself to combat that? Do you want to start?
Yes.
Or do you want to start? Or?
Yeah, we can go backwards, whatever works. I think a big part for me and WISE has been so helpful with this is finding community. I think I've had a very fortunate experience where I've had diverse classmates and a lot of people who look like me and had experiences as me that I've been able to talk to and experience, the ups and downs of undergrad with. And I think, having sounding boards in those people have been really helpful. And also having mentors that will walk you through, what you're going through so that you can go into different spaces and put your best foot forward at all times is how I see myself in that way.
Yeah. So I think that the main things that I would mention in this would be just like being aggressive about making opportunities for yourself and like not being afraid to advocate for yourself and like seek out opportunities. So like if you think that that lab has really cool research, email the PI, email them again until they answer you. PIs are really busy. Sometimes their inbox gets flooded. And then also something really powerful that I think I learned from a couple of my mentors, including my current like graduate school mentor, is to stand up for yourself in situations where you feel like you're maybe not being heard. So it's perfectly okay if somebody's like is talking over you for you to say, excuse me, I wasn't done talking. Or something that my current PI does, which I am not sure I'll ever have the confidence to do, but I'm working on it, is if someone does something that she doesn't like or like says something she doesn't like, she looks them dead in the face and says, I didn't like that. And that like kind of makes people stop in their tracks, and then you can explain like what went wrong, and it turns into a teaching opportunity. And the other thing that I would say is that I've learned that when things don't go as you would hope they go, to try to not like ruminate on it too much, because ultimately what is going to happen is that you're going to like drain your own energy. Like there will inevitably be unpleasant experiences, and while you should stand up for yourself, you don't want those unpleasant experiences to be a defining factor moving forward. And the most powerful thing you can do is like put that energy into your own success.
That's really good. I would say for me, interesting, since I work in the cosmetics industry, I've noticed, especially in the labs, most of my coworkers are women. So the men are actually usually the minorities as far as being the scientists and chemists. So I never had this feeling that I necessarily had a struggle or disconnect with my coworkers because of my gender. I would say that advocating for yourself is very important, and one of the things that really helped me was finding allies, finding people who can be mentors, but also people who can be sponsors, so people connected within my industry or within my company and even outside the industry for various needs, as far as just being a sounding board for advice you may want, or internally in your company, people who will advise you on how to navigate your career to reach a certain position or to ask for a promotion or a raise. And so getting that insight from people who have been in my position has been priceless. Also with advocating for myself, really just speaking up. So making sure that I am heard in my meetings. If I feel like I'm being talked over, I'll say, excuse me, like, can I just chime in for a quick second and say what I'm really feeling? But then also in advocating for myself, I learned knowing your limits and knowing, I think, especially from a professional standpoint, when it's time for you to make a shift. So with me at my previous employer, I felt that with certain things I was advocating for, I just kept hitting this wall. And so I really had to think, well, do I really want to keep going through this, or is there something else I can do? And so I ended up shifting to a different company.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very good point to make, and I guess with WISE, it provides the platform for you to learn about yourself, and that you can actually do these things that you mentioned. You know, it's easier said than done a lot of the times, but when you have a platform like WISE, you have an area where you can meet other women and see these play out, and these actions that you actually want to do yourself play out, and then you can have a voice for yourself to stand up. It's usually very hard to do from the get-go, and so it's a learning process, and over the undergrad years, it's nice to have this resource to push you to get to do that. And so I think one thing, because there are some undergrads in the crowd today, and so I guess what advice do you have for undergrads starting off their undergrad years, or those coming out of it? So we have you in various degrees of your program. You're, in the career part. You're just studying again, and you're about to leave too. So, what advice do you have for current undergrads on how to navigate the remaining years that they have as women in science and engineering?
Oh, okay. Wow.
Wise words coming today.
Wise words from
Wise
Wise.
words
I
from
like
Wise.
that. That's a good one. I would say, again, depending on where you are in your undergraduate career, if you are just starting out freshman, sophomore year, there's definitely time for you to still build your community. So talking to your professors, getting involved in campus, even, and not necessarily even being on an e-board, but just going into different meetings on things that you're interested in, or just checking out the student, I think, involvement fairs that they have to really hone in on what can work for you. And also just connecting with your advisors and even your classmates, like just making the time to interact with the people that you're around. And then from there, it can seem like a lot when you only have like 4 or 5 years in undergrad, but really creating a game plan for yourself as far as like, where do you want to go? Maybe imagine what you want to do, whether it's grad school or going into industry, and then try to think, okay, if I want to go into industry, what can I do to prepare myself for that? And then maybe work backwards from there. So kind of reverse engineer the future you want to have for yourself. And so building those connections and community can help you with that as well.
Yeah, I would echo that. I would say that the most important thing would be, of course, like the things that you do, like research and stuff like that, are really important, but the most important thing would just be to like build a community, and even more than that, like build like a mentorship circle. Like it doesn't have to be professors, it could be postdocs, it could be graduate students, it could even be older older undergraduates. But just like having people that like, there are no hard and fast rules for what you should do in every situation, right? So having people that you could ask, like, what would you do if you were going through this situation? Or like, where do you see me like going from here? Because I have these different paths, but I'm not sure which to choose. And having someone that knows you really well, but can take a little bit more of an objective perspective and maybe has gone through that, is really invaluable in like learning how to navigate this space.
Yeah, I would say something very, very similar. It's hard to put yourself out there, but I would just advocate for not being afraid to approach people that you want to be like. If there's someone you see and you're like, oh, this person's doing something I think is amazing, and I want to get at their level one day, or go down a path similar to them, or maybe not even an exact path like theirs, but they're a really empowering or inspiring person that you see in your life, whoever they may be, to be willing to approach them, and you'd be surprised how approachable and relatable they can be, and how helpful they can be throughout your journey. So whether that's a professor or a grad student or even a peer, I know there are many peers that I've had that I was like, oh, they're really good at this one class, and maybe we can study together, or something like that. There are a lot of useful and helpful skills and tools you can get through others who can really help you along the way through wherever you're meant to go.
All right, thank you. And for the last part of the panel discussion, I kind of wanted to touch on the fact, to go back and just, as a reminder, we're all human here. And so the panelists here today are very accomplished individuals, I truly believe. And if you look at the brochure, they have held so many leadership positions. And so, but when you take a step back from that, I kind of want to go back to the human aspect. And I do want to ask all of you, what do you do for fun? And how do you incorporate your personality into what you do and your accomplishments? Because it's really important to make sure you take a step back all the time. And we've heard that with the graduate panel. Take a step back and make sure you recalibrate yourself and you're well, and so you can continue doing all the great things that you do. And so, yeah, what you guys do for fun, and how important is that to you to continue doing what you're doing?
So I like that question a lot. As far as what I do, well, before COVID, I still love traveling, but before COVID, I definitely had more opportunities to travel. It was much more convenient. So that's something I love to do. Also, I'm very into just like exercise. So whether it's doing a Pilates class or yoga, that's something I like to do in my downtime, even if it's just walking a trail in my nearby park. It's something that I really do to unplug and really just make time for myself. As far as tying my personality, that was your question too, tying your personality into your accomplishments. I think it is very important because, again, that's like a part of your brand. It's a part of who you are. And so for me, tying myself into my work, it definitely has not been as challenging as I thought it would be once I really learned to just trust myself. And so with one of the panelists, previous panelists, they touched on the idea of imposter syndrome. And so combating that and realizing any space I'm put into is because I deserve to be here, I'm qualified. I can do the work that is given to me because I was put into position, I was chosen for this position. So it's not anything by chance or coincidence, like this is very intentional. Once I realized that, it gave me the confidence to realize, okay, wherever I'm at, these people want me, so let me do the due diligence of giving them me. And thankfully, with being in the cosmetics industry, I'm able to be colorful and creative and really have that outlet as well. And even through my volunteer work, I work with the Junior League in Montclair, Newark. They're a women's volunteer organization, which I was inspired to get into partially because of WISE. And so being an education and training chair there, I really brought my personality to that as well because I created programming that really highlighted different things with women of color. We actually just did a Black Women's Mental Health panel. There's several other bits of programming we'll do throughout the year, and these things have been welcomed and celebrated. And so it's very important to me for everyone to bring their personality into what they do because it's a part of your brand and it's a part of who you are.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, so the two hobbies that I focus on the most are that I play ice hockey, and on the other side of the spectrum, I recently started doing pottery, so like throwing like pots and stuff, which is really nice after like a long day of lab. Sometimes things don't work out the way that you want them to. It's just nice to like sit and like clear my mind and not think about anything and have that creative outlet. And I really love this question about how, like, incorporating your personality into your work, because this was actually a conversation that I was having with someone the other day, and that I feel like my personality tends to err on the side of being bubbly and energetic, and while that's great, it also can make people less inclined to take you seriously, and I do feel that sometimes. And I have always been a little bit concerned about that, and I brought it up to a professor, and they were like, no matter what, like, you need to be you need to be your personality, and if you show an exceptional standard of work, then like people will make that space for you, and people like you'll standardize your personality like being in STEM or like wherever you are. So yeah.
And definitely do not lose your bubbly personality. That's a big plus.
Exactly.
Some things that I do for fun. Let's see. So I like to run. I like exercise. Running is a really big thing for me. I like to go on hikes and different trails. I started cross country skiing a little bit since I've been in Syracuse because I'm originally from Los Angeles, so we don't get a lot of snow there. So my roommates have been, dragging me outside to do a lot of that. I also play the clarinet, and I joined a band here at Syracuse. So that's another thing I do for fun. I think when I first started to do research or got interested in research, I don't know, there's like this weird conception that doing lab or bench work is boring. And I don't know, my lab, I feel like we have a really good time connecting with each other. I'm like lab aux, so we have like a speaker, and like sometimes if we're not being too obnoxious or we're not super duper busy, we can like put on music and we talk. And I think, just being part of a community or a group within a lab can be a really fun space. And I think through that, I'm able to kind of express a little bit more of my personality or like chattiness or whatnot through those that I work with when I'm doing research. So that's great.
Yeah, thank you. So that's all we have questions for the panelists. I kind of just wanted to end, and truly thank you all for the answers. It's refreshing to hear, from the undergraduate perspective, which is where everything kind of starts. But one thing that stood out to me, and you heard it a lot today, there are a lot of women in science. In my lab, there are more women than men, in at least in the lab that I work in. But the reason we have programs like WISE is because leading up to this panel in preparation, I was looking up some facts, and one fact that stood out to me was that out of the 616 Nobel laureates in physics, science, medicine, and physiology since 1901, only 19 were women. And so this is why programs like WISE still truly matter, and the kind of support that they provide is truly significant. And it provides a push for confidence, but also that you should also just reassure to yourself that you can do this. It doesn't really matter that you're a woman in the science field. And so I just wanted to end with that and truly thank the panelists for coming from a long way and during stressful times in the semester. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And for the last portion of our program, they asked that you remain seated, and it will resume from there.